Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would review this little video today that I thought was very particularly interesting. And this is going to be a video by the boxing channel known as Dante's Boxing Nation. And of course, Dante's Boxing Nation, just like I did yesterday and a couple of other channels did yesterday, he finally overall is going to be talking about the recent rumors, or at least the recent news, that Mr. Soul Canelo Alvarez, who I currently have as my number one pound for pound fighter in the whole sport of boxing, there of course is recent rumors that apparently Canelo Alvarez, instead of possibly taking the Jermall Charlo fight with that of the PBC, that instead he may decide to go the route of signing with Matchroom or DAZN, and that he may sign a two-fight deal. And of course, the first fight that he would fight would be against that of the Russian WBA champion of the world, I believe, at light heavyweight, which of course would be that of Dmitry Bivol, which I think would be a fantastic fight. And then, of course, after that, apparently he may face Gennady Triple G Golovkin if Golovkin can get past, I believe, one of the champions at the middleweight division, Mr. Ryota Murata, which I believe more than likely he would, because I don't think Murata, of course, is necessarily the creme de la creme, but it is what it is. But anyways, I do think that this two-fight deal, if it does happen, it seems overall that it is possibly likely to happen. I do think all in all that is very, very interesting. But the thing that I really have a question about, especially when it comes to Mr. Dante's Boxing Nation, and a certain amount of you may ask, or I get certain people that ask me questions, they say, well, I don't know how you can sit through their content. I don't know how you can do this, how you can listen to them. I can't stand their videos. Why do you review them? Well, I mainly review them overall for one sole purpose, to basically expose certain narratives that may go out there. And especially when it comes to sports, or pretty much no matter what it comes on, there's always going to be a certain amount of narratives, whether they be positive or negative. And basically what I'm here to do is somewhat put my logical and objective spin on things. That's mainly what my objective is here basically to do. And when it comes to Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez, we all know that with a certain amount of these channels, especially that of the new media or LDBC archetype when it comes down to it, they're not fans of Canelo Alvarez. In fact, they hate his guts. It just is what it is. And that's why overall I tend to review a lot of these channels to see all in all if they are consistent, if they stick by their word, to see all in all if the narratives that they propose or that they put out there, if they are consistent. And of course they almost never are. And the reason why that is because they're not logical, they're not objective. Because they're pretty much fanboys just like everybody else. And I think it's a great thing to have your own platform. I think it's a great thing all in all to have as big of a channel as Dante's Boxing Nation has. But at the end of the day, what's not a good thing is you spreading false rumors or, basically spreading false propaganda when it comes down to it just because you don't like a certain fighter. It basically is the same thing that I see on certain networks, maybe when they try to tear down a Michael Jordan, or, maybe if I watch the tennis network and I see certain people, try to tear down Novak Djokovic compared to some of the other tennis players, or yada, yada, yada. I could go on and on. But everyone overall has their own story. Everyone overall has their own narratives that they like to propose. That doesn't mean that just because we have a difference in opinion, that overall, I like to criticize people. But when I see all in all that you basically have no morals, you're a person that basically has no consistency, and that basically you'll spread and say anything just to possibly get a point across just because you have an emotional problem with this fighter or with a person when it comes down to it, and you're basically going to spread whatever propaganda that you can and want to in order to try to tear down this fighter's brand and try to trick people into basically thinking the same way, then all of a sudden that's when I go in and I say, you know what? No, I kind of have to address this. It is what it is. But anyways, we're going to see what Mr. Dante's Boxing Nation has to say about the possibility of Canelo Alvarez facing that of a Dmitry Bivol. Keep in mind that Dante's Boxing Nation, and I have proof of this because I've reviewed a multitude of his videos talking about this conversation. Dante's Boxing Nation, when it comes down to it, he has said a multitude of times that Canelo, the only reason why he was facing Jermall Charlo possibly next is because he was coming off of his worst performance. Well, now, the fact that this fight may not possibly happen, it should be no problem with Dante because Dmitry Bivol, by his own admission, Dmitry Bivol is a better fighter overall, or at least better for Canelo, than what Jermall Charlo is. Not in terms of a monetary perspective, but in terms of overall actually having a legitimate chance. But you're going to notice in this video once again that Dante changes up his energy because he does not like Canelo. And he has a narrative to play out. But anyways, let's get into the video. Let's see what he has to say.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So some very interesting news. Canelo Alvarez has turned down a one-fight $45 million deal to fight Jermall Charlo. According to ESPN's Mike Coppinger, Canelo Alvarez prefers the two-fight deal by Matchroom and DAZN, which is supposed to be worth $85 million. That would include a fight with Bivol and Gennady Golovkin. Let me just start by saying this. Although it may surprise a lot of people that Canelo Alvarez, he still turns down the Jermall Charlo fight when we all know that Charlo has been chasing him for 6 years. Clearly, deep down, Canelo Alvarez still feels that Jermall Charlo is the most dangerous out of the three. But that surprises me because I would have thought that after Jermall Charlo...
So basically the narrative that you're already trying to spread, and you're basically already going back on your word. And this is why it's very hard for me to respect a channel or a person like Dante, because all he is a shill. That's all he is. All he is basically a pawn that basically goes on these narrative when it comes down to it. Or basically, he'll just say anything. Basically what he is, he's a weasel. It just is what it is. It's very hard to trust someone like Dante's Boxing Nation because he'll say anything at any given time. He's almost like a politician. You can't trust someone like that. He's a person that will say anything at any given moment in time. He'll say one thing 1 minute, and then within the next 30 seconds, he will completely contradict himself. Because he was on record as stating not too long ago that he believed that there was two fighters that Canelo Alvarez would have no chance against. One of them being Dmitry Bivol, and the other one being Dmitry Bivol. So basically, what is Dante trying to spread right now? Oh, well, Canelo must think that Jermall Charlo was the most dangerous. That's why he's turning him down. So why do you not give Canelo Alvarez credit for facing Dmitry Bivol? Once again, this is why you cannot trust overall a slime ball like a Dante's Boxing Nation. He will say anything. He will say anything.
Last performance.
And if you don't have a consistent word, if you don't have consistency, that means basically that you're not to be trusted.
Canelo Alvarez would have jumped on that opportunity. But it's very possible that while fans are saying, Charlo looked horrible against Montiel, and he did put on his worst performance, no doubt about it. While fans are looking at it that way, Canelo...
No, I don't think Jermall Charlo put on his worst performance hands down. I think the worst performance of his career hands down was that Matt Korobov fight. Because he looked like shit in that fight. But it is what it is. He also didn't look too hot in the Austin Trout fight either. But Montiel, it was not a great performance by Charlo. But I would not say that it was a disastrous performance. He still clearly almost won every single round of the fight. It's just that Montiel, he just wasn't going away. He was a little bit tougher and a little bit more powerful than what Jermall Charlo thought he was going to be, so we couldn't really get him out of there. So it just is what it is.
Canelo can be looking at things like, yeah, he looked bad against Montiel, but what if I sign to take this fight, and then the same Jermall Charlo that knocked out Julian J. Rock Williams that beat Derevychenko shows up? Which is very possible. Because see, when you're looking at things through the lens of an actual fighter that has to get in the ring with this guy, yeah, you're not going to look at things like fans on the internet. If you're going to fight Jermall Charlo next, then you're going to have to train and expect that the best Jermall Charlo is going to show up.
Absolutely. Now, what did Dante's Boxing Nation just admit to us there? Basically, what he said with all this bullshit that he's been saying for the past months, which is that if Canelo were to possibly take the Jermall Charlo fight, he's taking him off of his worst performance. I've been saying for many, many months now. And basically, I was saying this for many, many times. This is why I'm saying Dante, he does not believe in a lot of the bullshit that he says. This is why it's very hard to trust someone like him. This is why overall I call him a sleazeball, because Dante's a politician. That's all he is. All he basically says is shit that he does not even truly believe himself. All he does it overall is to convince his brain-dead followers. It just is what it is. And once again, great thing that you have your own platform. But if you just use your own platform overall to spread a bunch of just dipshit propaganda, who are you helping? It just is what it is. But at the end of the day, basically what I've been saying for many times, and for those of you that have been around my channel long enough, you know that I've said this specifically, that if you actually believed that Jermall Charlo had a really good chance over Canelo Alvarez, just one, iffy performance is not going to really change your mind that that's still a very, very close fight. But then all of a sudden, when it seemed like the fight was going to be signed, all of a sudden Dante and these channels said, oh, well, you know what, I don't want to see the fight. All of a sudden, oh, Jermall Charlo, he's more of a broken down fighter. So what did Dante's Boxing Nation just admit to you? He did not even truly believe that shit. That's basically what he just admitted to you.
Eddie Hearn, he came out a couple days ago And he said that out of the three, Bivol would be Canelo Alvarez's toughest fight. He said Charlo would be his easiest fight. But Oscar De La Hoya, he came out and he said the complete opposite. He believes that Bivol would be Canelo Alvarez's easiest fight and Charlo would be his most dangerous fight.
Well, what do you believe? That's the question. What do you believe, Dante? You know, don't worry about necessarily other people's opinions. What do you believe? Because you were on record just stating a few videos ago that Canelo Alvarez, and if I can put it in this video, I'll find it, but you can go ahead and watch his most recent videos. You'll find it somewhere. He said that Canelo Alvarez has no chance against Bivol whatsoever. So obviously you must think that this Bivol fight is a very big challenge.
Let me put it this way. Because I've already told you guys, I believe that Bivol will beat Canelo Alvarez.
Well, let me give you that much credit.
I believe when it comes to Jermall Charlo, if the same Jermall Charlo that fought Montiel shows up and he has to move up and wait and fight Canelo, then that makes the fight a 50-50 fight.
No, that fight does not make it a 50-50 fight. If the same Charlo from the Montiel fight shows up, that Jermall Charlo is getting canned. The best version of Jermall Charlo, which I've ever seen, which was against Sergey Derevyanchenko, even that Jermall Charlo would only have a 30% chance over Canelo Alvarez, realistically. Now, if you have a difference in opinion, there's no real big problem with that. I'm just saying I don't see Jermall Charlo as Canelo Alvarez's biggest threat. I know a certain amount of people, they say, oh, well, he's a very decent boxer and he has decent size over Canelo, blah, blah, blah. Canelo has fought people, in my opinion, that not only were as pretty much as big as Charlo, but better boxers than him, like a Gennady Golovkin or a Danny Jacobs. You know, people who actually also had real dog power. It just is what it is.
If the best Jermall Charlo, the one that once again fought Derevyanchenko, who fought against Julian J. Rock Williams, if that Charlo shows...
Jermall Charlo did not even look overly impressive against Julian J. Rock Williams. If you go ahead and watch that fight, he was getting hit all over the place. So what that tells me is that Jermall Charlo, really both Charlo brothers, even at their best, in my opinion, they're just not going to defeat Canelo. They don't have that. They don't have a realistic, in my opinion, a realistic chance of defeating Canelo Alvarez. You know, that's not me saying that they have no chance at all. But all that's me saying is that I don't think that they have the style. I think they're too limited, too stiff, and I think once they feel Canelo's power and his boxing ability, I think they're going to start backing off. And there's even a very decent chance that they may get stopped.
What's up?
Even David Benavidez, who's been talking a whole lot of shit, of course, on Canelo because he wants his shot. And, you know, I think that David Benavidez, he certainly deserves a shot with Canelo. But right now, he's kind of trying to get that ticket just like everyone else. And, you know, he's one of the fighters, in my opinion, that, of course, you know, he has a right to that. But when it comes down to, at the end of the day, David, of course, he's not getting that fight right now. So he's kind of trying to clout chase Canelo right now when it comes down to it. He even admitted overall with some of the bullshit that him and his father have been saying lately, he thinks that Jermall Charlo would get stopped by Canelo Alvarez. But of course, you know, it doesn't always matter what other people's opinions are. What is your own opinion? Listen, my own opinion overall is this. I think that if Jermall Charlo were to face Canelo Alvarez, even at his best, which more than likely the best version of himself would show up against Canelo, he would be very lucky if he did not get stopped in that fight. Do I actually see him winning? No. That doesn't mean that it's impossible. I wouldn't see it as a Mike Tyson versus Buster Douglas upset necessarily, but at the end of the day, I just don't see Jermall Charlo having a legitimate chance.
All three of those...
Or at least big chance.
...fighters, Jermall Charlo would be...
Dmitry Bivol, like I said, he has about a 50% chance.
...most dangerous. Because there's no doubt about it. Athletic, slick boxers with a good jab, that is Canelo Alvarez's kryptonite. Which is the reason why Canelo Alvarez avoided Jermall Charlo and Demetrius Andrade for the last 6...
Right, but Jermall Charlo is not a slick boxer. You know, Demetrius Andrade, to a degree, is a slick boxer. Jermall Charlo is not a slick boxer. Like I said, he reminds me of a bigger version of Danny Garcia. That's all he reminds me of. I don't know why people take a look at Jermall Charlo and think that he's just the next Aristotle Lara, because he's not. And I think once upon a time that Canelo, that he did have a lot of problems against some of those slicker fighters with a decent jab, but he's improved against them as well. Because I don't think that he would have been able to get past Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Plant the way that he was able to, who in my opinion, to be quite honest with you, are two boxers that are debatably more skilled overall than a Jermall Charlo anyway. But of course, Jermall Charlo, he would, you know, have the power over them and athleticism over them. But at the end of the day, you know, Jermall Charlo, in my opinion, he's not someone that, in my opinion, is the boxer of a Caleb Plant or Billy Joe Saunders or Hell, I don't even know if he's on the level of a Danny Jacobs. I would maybe put him slightly above Jacobs in terms of technique, but it's not a huge separation. And Danny Jacobs actually has more power in his prime overall than what a Jermall Charlo does.
Years.
And of course, that's not even me bringing up Gennady Triple G Golovkin. Now, Gennady, of course, on the surface, because of the way that he fights, a lot of people, of course, would say, well, he's not necessarily slick. We're more talking about fighters that are on the back foot, more, defensive. You can maybe say that, but at the end of the day, Gennady Golovkin, in terms of the offensive side of the ball, he's actually a very decently slick fighter because he can cut off the ring extremely well. He has an all-time great jab. Gennady doesn't even just have a good jab. He has one of the greatest jabs that I've personally ever seen. During my time, he probably has one of the top 10 jabs that I've ever seen. Him, Mayweather, Cotto, Canelo, it's up there.
But understand this. Just because Canelo Alvarez has problems with athletic black American undefeated fighters, that doesn't mean those are the only fighters he has problems with. I told you guys I believe Bivol would be a nightmare for Canelo Alvarez. Because if an old faded Kovalev can outbox Canelo, even if he was only able to do it for 4 or 5 rounds, if he's able to outbox Canelo and
even if he was only able to do it for 4 or 5 rounds. What are you saying, Dante? I thought you said that you thought that Kovalev, that he outboxed Canelo Alvarez for the whole entire fight. So what are you basically admitting right now? You thought Canelo Alvarez was winning that fight. This is why I can't respect this dude. This dude is so full of shit. Like, it's no offense against the dude, but so many of these channels, it's just so hard for me to respect them because it's like, how can I respect you? How can I really respect your opinion? Because you don't really actually have an actual opinion. All you basically are, once again, is a politician. You basically just say all in all what needs to be said, and overall to basically, string along your dumbass fan base. It is what it is.
he wasn't even using all of the type of power.
But Bivol, in my opinion, when it comes down to it, he overall is going to be a bigger threat for Canelo than what a Sergey Kovalev was at the time. Because, of course, he is in his prime. But what I will say is this. Bivol is nothing to mess around with. He's a person that is extremely quick with both his hands and his feet. He's a person, all in all, that has a great amount of power. He's a person, all in all, that moves around the ring very well. What I will say is this. I give Bivol a good 40 to 50% chance. And there's very, very few fighters in the world of boxing today that I would actually give that certain amount of a chance over Canelo Alvarez. Very few.
That he used to use when he was undefeated. He was fighting like a scared man that had been knocked out twice, which he had been knocked out twice. That's the way Kovalev fought.
Well, he fought like he couldn't necessarily get his counters in there because he couldn't. Because Canelo Alvarez, basically what he was doing is that he was going to the body and he was going to the head up with that left hook. And eventually, that's exactly what caught Kovalev. If you rewatch that fight, the reason why Kovalev was not willing to go to Canelo Alvarez's body and the reason why he was not able to sit down on his punches a little bit more was because, all in all, when it came down to it, he was getting countered. Canelo Alvarez is one of the greatest counter punchers that I've personally ever seen. He will walk you down overall when it comes down to it, and he will break you down incrementally. Like I said, I reviewed this one channel not too long ago, Chronicles of Judo 144. Very great channel. Very good channel. I reviewed a video of his, and he compared Canelo Alvarez to Rocky Marciano. And I've mentioned this also a few times as well, at least ever since I've seen that video. And although on the surface, a lot of people may not get the comparison, I certainly understand why. Because if you watch Rocky Marciano old clips and see the way that he used to fight, he would kind of overall fight a little bit low. Now, him and Canelo don't fight 100% the same. But Rocky Marciano, basically what his objective would be to get in there, overall hit you with whatever counters that he could, and break you down incrementally and try to get the knockout. Canelo Alvarez fights in a very similar way at this point in time. Except I believe that Canelo, that he can fight in a multitude of ways. He's very defensively responsible. He's a person that can fight a little bit on the back foot. He certainly can fight on the front foot. He can fight in almost any style that he desires. Canelo Alvarez, like I said, just like Chronicles of Judo 144 when I reviewed his video, and he knows overall what he's watching, he said that Canelo Alvarez, you can tell that he's an all-time great. I agree. Whenever I watch Canelo, and this is why I've been saying for a very long time, whenever I watch Canelo, I know that I'm watching the creme de la creme.
Kind of fighter, or that version of Kovalev, can outbox a Canelo Alvarez. If a Caleb Plant, who has no power at all, and is not on the level, nowhere near the level of a Floyd Mayweather or even a Jermall Charlo, if he was able to outbox Canelo for...
Actually, he's very close to the level, if not even above a Jermall Charlo. If you wanted to argue that Jermall Charlo is above Caleb Plant, I maybe would get it, but in terms of actually boxing ability, Now in terms of power, Jermall Charlo, of course, has more power than a Caleb Plant. But does he have overall the defensive responsibility? Does he have the slickness of a Caleb Plant? Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Rounds and rounds and rounds. Then we know that Bivol will give Canelo all the problems in the world because he's better than a Caleb Plant, better than a Kovalev. He's great at controlling distance, controlling range.
I would someone agree with that, and he's also much better than a Jermall Charlo. Like I said, there's only two fighters out there from the 160 to 175 pound divisions, even 200 pound weight division. There's only a couple of fighters that I would actually legitimately give a 50% chance over Canelo. That would either be Bivol or Beterbiev. So good, Dante. This means that if Canelo Alvarez beats Bivol, there should be no excuses.
He knows how to counterpunch very well, and he has the power, he has the natural size of a light heavyweight. But if Jermall Charlo, hypothetically, Jermall Charlo and Bivol were naturally the same weight, when it comes to...
No, you don't compare it like that. You don't compare it like that because according to you, Jermall Charlo, when it comes down to it, Jermall Charlo is supposed to be, better than Canelo. That's basically what you were alleging in this video. So what does that mean? That means that Jermall Charlo, just like Canelo Alvarez, if he should move up in the weight divisions when it comes down to it, that means that he should have the same chance, if not even a better chance, over Dmitry Bivol just as Canelo Alvarez. So why are you saying if Jermall Charlo were the same size? You just said that Jermall Charlo earlier in the video was pretty much on the same level as Canelo. So then why are you not treating him the same? This is why I say, Dante can say all this shit all he wants to. He knows that Jermall Charlo is not on the Canelo Alvarez level. He knows this. He can spit all this bullshit all he wants to. He does not believe what he says.
Who the most complete fighter is, then it would still be Charlo because the...
No, it wouldn't be. Jermall Charlo was not even close to Dmitry Bivol. He's not even close. He's not the better athlete than Dmitry Bivol. He's not the better boxer. He's not more intelligent in the ring. He is not the better opponent or the more dangerous opponent than that of Dmitry Bivol. The only thing that Jermall Charlo brings to the table more than that of a Dmitry Bivol is more of a fan base. That would be it. There is nothing that Jermall Charlo has over that of a Dmitry Bivol. If the fight were to happen, Dmitry Bivol would absolutely embarrass him. I have no doubt about that in my mind.
One flaw that Bivol does have is he can't fight on the inside. He's not comfortable fighting on the inside.
I'm not so sure about that. But we'll see about that.
But this is very common when it comes to European fighters. Typically, they fight long range.
Jermall Charlo, when it comes down to it, he's not always 100% super duper great on the inside. He's decent on the inside, but if you're able, like I said with Jermall Charlo, if you're able to push him back and somewhat outbox him, if you're able to somewhat, not allow you to bully him when it comes down to it, or not allow him to bully you, he'll be in a little bit of trouble. That's why he was not able to knock out Juan Montiel or Juan Macias Montiel. Once Jermall Charlo sees that you can somewhat withstand his power, he has a lot of problems. Go ahead and take a look at the Matt Korobov fight.
And they rely on more straight punches than inside type of punches like hooks to the body, hooks, uppercuts, etc. Charlo, on the other hand, he can do it all.
But I don't believe that Dmitry Bivol cannot fight on the inside. I've seen him against Sullivan Barrera. I've seen him against Joe Smith Jr. He does like to keep the distance more overall within the fight. But that does not mean, in my opinion, that he cannot fight on the inside.
Fight on the inside. He'll fight on the outside. He can counterpunch. He can jab. But with all that being said, there's still a question mark next to Charlo's name because of his last performance. We don't know if that last performance, that's the new Charlo, or if that was just a bad performance.
No, it's not the new Charlo. It's the same Charlo that you've been seeing for the past several years. It's just, I don't think that you really know shit about boxing and you don't really know shit about Jermall Charlo, so you see him overall through rose-colored glasses. Allegedly anyway. Allegedly you see him through rose-colored glasses because, like I said, I don't think that Dante actually believes that Jermall Charlo is on the level that he tries to allege that he is.
But the only way we're going to find out is seeing Charlo in the ring. We have to see how he looks in this next fight. Which most likely...
That's right, his next fight, which more than likely is going to be against a C-class fighter. Or a fighter, all in all, that maybe Canelo Alvarez is leftover, someone who's already been knocked out. But we'll see.
Likely won't be Canelo Alvarez. However, Mike Coppinger, he did say in that post that they are looking at Jermall Charlo as a possible last-minute type of option. Like, for example, if negotiations don't go well when it comes to the two-fight deal with DAZN, Canelo may go ahead and consider taking the $45 million to fight Jermall Charlo instead. Now, what real boxing fans love about these options is there will be no Canelo doing a massive cherry pick, because Canelo originally wanted to fight against Makabu, a fighter that no one had ever heard of, a guy who had been knocked out twice. He had no type of skills, no speed, no type of defense, no chin. All he had was a belt at cruiserweight. Canelo...
Right, I like this energy, but at least, what I'll say is this. I actually didn't think the Makabu fight was horrible, but I understand where Dante is coming from. But where's the same energy when Terrence Bud Crawford fought Amir Khan and Kell Brook? It's nowhere to be found.
Wanted to cherry pick Makabu, but no one, including Eddie Hearn, no one was willing to pay for that fight. So it forces...
I think that Canelo Alvarez, like I said, I think he could get in the ring with the dog turd, and I think that more than likely it would do some sort of numbers. So I don't think overall that anyone buying the fight, I don't think that was an issue. But I just think that Canelo Alvarez, I think that he's seen a nice opportunity to sign a 2-fight deal. And I think all in all that he thinks not only it would do good for his legacy, but do decent for numbers.
Canelo Alvarez to take 2 tough fights, either Bivol or Charlo. Now, when it comes to Gennady Golovkin, I truly believe that Canelo, he obviously looks at that as a much easier fight than it was in the first 2 fights, because now Gennady Golovkin is 40 years old, he's inactive, and he would have to move up to an entire new weight class.
Why do people keep mentioning the same shit all in all, that he has to move up to a new weight class? Listen, what I'll say is this. Gennady Golovkin, in my opinion, he doesn't really have that much of a chance in the Canelo trilogy, in my view. He has about the same chance, in my opinion, as what a Charlo would have over Canelo. But when it comes down to it, what I'll say is this. Why do people always keep mentioning that he has to go up to a new weight class? Weren't these the same guys that said that Gennady Golovkin avoided Andre Ward? Where was that talk then? Like, come on. You're supposed to be one of the top pound-for-pound fighters out there, or a transcendent fighter, one of the best champions out there. Moving up one weight class should not be a deal breaker. You know what I'm saying? It just is what it is. Anyway.
To take the
now, of course, Gennady, once again, like I said, I don't think that he's at a good point in his career anymore. But at the end of the day, so moving up one weight class, like I said, that to me is not really that big of a problem. You know how many all-time great fighters were able to move up the weight classes and win their biggest fights because they were transcendent fighters? Canelo was one of those fighters.
But regardless of how tough a third fight with Gennady Golovkin will be or would be, Canelo Alvarez, he would still have to fight the very dangerous Dmitry Bivol. He will still end up being involved in a real fight, regardless if he takes the 2-fight deal with Bivol and Golovkin, or he takes the 1-fight deal with Jermall Charlo. Boy, it's amazing when you think about it. It only took 4 years for Canelo Alvarez to take a real tough fight where the other opponent has a very good chance of winning.
Actually, no, Canelo's been facing very decent competition for a very long time. He fought Golovkin, he fought Jacobs, he fought Callum Smith, he fought Caleb Plant, Billy Joe Saunders, Sergey Kovalev. He fought all those fighters within this past 4 years. All those fighters, in my opinion, you could debate were A-grade fighters.
2022 should be a very, very interesting...
Like I said, there's a difference overall between what Canelo has done and what a Mikey Garcia or Gervonta Tank Davis has done. Certain fighters that have slithered in and out of the weight divisions and pretty much fought people without a pulse.
Year for Canelo Alvarez. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one.
But anyways, it seems like overall that is about it for this video. But good on Dante overall. We'll see all in all if he actually gives Canelo Alvarez credit for possibly defeating a Dmitry Bivol. If Canelo Alvarez can somehow manage to get over a Dmitry Bivol, I predict more than likely that he will win the fight, more than likely by decision. It could be by a stoppage, but we'll see. I think that Canelo, because of Dimitri's athleticism and his size, more than likely Canelo is probably going to win by decision, but we'll have to see what happens. But it'll be very, very interesting. But as you see, Dante's Boxing Nation, he already has a little ploys overall as a tactic in place to possibly discredit Canelo Alvarez, even if he does possibly get the victory. As he said, Dmitry Bivol does not like to fight on the inside, and Charlo actually, he's the more complete fighter. But then when the Charlo fight actually was going to happen, then he said, oh, it's off his worst performance, and we don't know. So Dante, once again, There's no offense against the dude, but the dude is full of shit. He's been full of shit for years. When it comes down to it, you can't really trust anything the guy says. It just is what it is. But I am very personally excited to see who Canelo Alvarez may face next. And then if it is Dmitry Bivol, I think that is a fantastic fight. Fantastic fight indeed. But we'll see all in all what happens. Anyways, that's really about it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I will talk to you all later.